And good morning, everybody. Welcome to Chalk Talk. I am your host, Kim Davis. It is July the 20th. Let me just, before I go any further, tell you, I cannot believe it is already the 20th day of July. This year is flying by, and I don't know if that's good or bad, but it just is. So welcome to Chalk Talk. We have a lot to get to on today's show. And thank you in advance for being actively engaged in this conversation, right? So I look forward to hearing your thoughts about some of the things we're going to talk about today. There is a lot going on. Opening ceremonies is scheduled for Friday in Japan at the Olympics, and there is a lot happening around the Olympics. COVID is creating a little bit of a lot of concern. I don't know if I want to say it's creating chaos, but there's definitely some legitimate concerns about COVID. It is in the country of Japan, they're having their own challenges with COVID, and it is affecting the Olympics, the Olympians, some journalists, people on the Olympic committee. There have been a number of positive tests. People have been put into the protocol, some are quarantined. And so there's just a lot of concern about the Olympics and what's happening in Japan. I'd love to know your thoughts about it. Excuse me. Drop it in the chat. Let me know what you think. Should the Olympics be canceled? I've done a couple of interviews, a national one yesterday, a local one last night. And I don't think the game's going to be canceled. I think it would have to be the country of Japan saying we are in a state of emergency and this is just too much. We are not going to be able to, we just can't afford to host the event because of the danger that it presents to our country, to our citizens, just everybody around. I don't see that happening, but I think it would take that sort of a push. Japan has spent a lot of money to get the rights to host this game. NBC spent a lot of money for the right to broadcast the game. And whenever there's a lot of money at the heart of something, it makes it even more difficult for decisions to be made to do something contrary to what is scheduled. So I've said I was surprised that they went on and decided to host the Olympic Games. But at this point, I don't know how you cancel it, but I do understand the concern, and I'm a little anxious about it for people who are there. Am I excited about the Olympics? It's the Olympics. I will watch, but there's not quite the excitement that normally I feel when you're talking about the Olympics, right? And maybe because there's just so many other things happening. There's so many other distractions, in addition to the real concerns about COVID. So we'll talk about that. Drop it in the chat if you think should the games be canceled? Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear from you. Also, and I'm going to play a story from ABC that talks a bit about that. Back home, right? It is the NBA Finals are back in action tonight. It's Game 6. Of course, the Milwaukee Brewers have a 3-2 lead in that best of 7 series, and they could win it at home tonight. I know a lot of people are counting out the Suns, and they've already created this narrative about another Chris Paul team that was up 2-0 and came back and lost. And so I think this team is different. There are some things that have to happen tonight for Milwaukee to win. We're going to talk about what that is. There's some things that have to happen tonight for Phoenix to win. It could happen. Initially, I picked Phoenix in 6 games. Clearly, that's not happening. If there's a winner tonight, a champion tonight, it will be the Milwaukee Bucks. Otherwise, the series will be tied at 3 games apiece, and Game 7 goes back to Phoenix. So, Phoenix has to dig deep tonight. Chris Paul has got to come out with another one of those best ever games. And I think he can do it. I hope he does do it. You guys know I picked the Suns from the beginning, so I'm going to continue to stay with them. I'm pulling for the Suns, right? I would love to see Monty Williams and Chris Paul win a chip, but they got some work to do. They're going to have to play, and it's not going to be easy because we've seen what kind of fan support Milwaukee has inside the building, outside the building. So it's going to be electric and magic, and I look forward to game 6 tonight. I hope the Suns can pull it out, and tie this series and send it back to Phoenix for a game 7. So that's my hope. But we're gonna talk a little bit about what it will take to actually get there. And then there's another story I want to talk about on today's show, which is not a sports story, but it is absolutely important and relevant, and it has to do with voter rights and this ongoing effort around the country for these voter suppression bills and laws happening in a lot of the red states, because the legislatures are controlled by Republicans, and in these states there's a large number of Black and brown voters, young people that vote. And so the whole goal is, it's not about voting integrity. There's no integrity in what these states are doing, especially the state I live in here in Texas. That's not voter integrity, because there is no voter fraud. It is voter suppression. And I just want to keep that on our minds, because we need to be engaged. You need to be calling your congressional representatives, your senators, your legislators. Call your governor, who's absolutely nuts. Yes, he is absolutely out of control. And so I think, what can we do? We can be engaged. We can call. We can email. We can show up any way that we can and say these things are not okay. Because in a minute, folk, if we don't put a stop to this, if we don't put the pressure on our elected officials who work for us, I always go back to that, right? To remind us that they work for us. If we don't put the pressure on them to do the right thing, to make the right choices, for democracy, to protect our right to vote, and to protect the right for our votes to be counted and not overturned, all of that is at stake right now. Where will we be? So it's a fight, and we got to be in it. So, maybe you're not one that's going to go out and march or walk in the streets and protest, but you can call somebody. You can send an email. You can write letters, but call, send emails, write. There's a lot we can do, and I want to talk about that. And I'm going to let you hear from STACEY Abrams, who is, been involved in this fight about voters' rights, and really makes it very plain and very clear what's happening and what the challenges are and what the issues are. So all of that is on tap for today's show. So again, thank you for being a part of Chalk Talk. Let me know that you are here. Drop it in the chat. Say hello. Say good morning. And also, let me know your thoughts. The Houston Astros are back in action tonight. I've got to always mention the Houston Astros, right? They're hosting the Cleveland Indians at Minute Maid Park. They won a one-game got a one-game win last night. The Astros are 5-5 out of the last 10 games, and but they're still in first place in the AL West. They have a 3.5 game lead over. Get back to that. Over the Oakland A's. They're 3.5 games ahead of the Oakland A's, and the Oakland A's 6.5 games ahead of Seattle. So the Astros are tied for the best record in no, they're not. The White Sox have the best record right now in the American League. The White Sox are 57-37. The Red Sox are 57-38, and the Astros are 57-38. In the National League, the San Francisco Giants have the best record. They actually have the best record in the entire league. They're at 59-34. But so the Astros are in the hunt, right? They're holding on, and so we know that the key for them is to be healthy. We know the key is for the bullpen. I mean, for their pitching, for the starters to be able to get through at least a good 6 innings. If you can get to 7, that's gold. But we know that they will have the offense, but they've got to continue to get production from the pitching. So that's my Astros update. I'll try to get out there. Just because it's been raining so much here, and although there is a covered stadium, I just haven't wanted to deal with the weather. But hopefully this weekend I can get out and see In fact, I say this weekend, I don't even know if they're, I haven't looked that far ahead to see the schedule. If they're playing, where are they this weekend? Yep, they're at home. They're hosting the Rangers this weekend. So I'll probably get out and try to see the Astros in person this weekend. So good morning, Sylvia, my sister. Welcome, welcome. And good to see you always. And of course, Charles Lamar Drayden, welcome to Chalk Talk. Always good to have you in the building, in the room, on the show, in the studio. Our legal expert. We got to schedule some time, Charles, to get you back on and talk about some of the stuff happening around the country just in general. So I'm going to start with this. We're going to start with Game 6. Wait, where did it go? And I want to let you hear. I picked a preview for tonight, and it's one that has one of my favorite people is Avery Johnson, is a person that they're using on CBS for some analyst work. So this is a preview.
Well, we heard it. Bucks fans chanting Bucks 6 for Game 3. Now, some fans, they probably laughed considering they were up 2 games to none. But fast forward, and that's what could happen tonight in Milwaukee. Bucks and Giannis now leading the series 3 games to 2. Have a chance to win the title in 6.
Milwaukee now just 1 win away from their second NBA title in franchise history. Their last one, 1971. Looking at games when the Bucks had a chance to clinch the series, and man, it is looking good. Game 4 against the Heat, they won by 17. Game 7 against the Nets, won by 4 in OT. Game 6, the Hawks won by 11. What will happen tonight in Game 6? Let's welcome back our NBA champ, Avery Johnson. Now, Avery, what needs to happen for the Bucks to win their first title since 1971?
Well, it's all about Drew Holiday. Obviously, Giannis is going to get his 32, 35 points, double-figure rebounds. He's going to be Giannis. They're going to have 25, 30,000 fans outside the building. But this is all about Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday has yet to have really good back-to-back scoring games, not just in the finals, but throughout the playoffs. His defense on Chris Paul has been unbelievable. But Drew Holiday has scored a basketball tonight. Middleton's been a little inconsistent in terms of his elite superstar status. But if Drew Holiday scores 25 points tonight, continues to play the outstanding defense and be a disruptor, whether he's on the ball or off the ball. That was an incredible steal at the end of Game 5 on Devin Booker. This guy can dominate the game defensively, but they really need his point production tonight in Game 6, where they're trying to close out the Phoenix Suns and win the NBA Finals.
All right, so you heard Avery Johnson say that Drew Holiday is going to have to score, right? I want to go back to something he said. Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks. Charles said he recommends going to a game. He won tickets and enjoyed himself thoroughly. I'm just saying, absolutely. They were pretty good seats. He posted some pictures from the game. So, and he got a little special attention from Heisha with the Astros. So definitely you should go check out a game. We know it's a great stadium, and you got to support the work that Dusty and that team is doing over there. Rick said he still got the Suns winning the next 2. So hey, listen, I picked the Suns from the beginning, said Rick, and I'm sticking with him. They've got to win the next 2 if they're going to win it, right? So we will see what happens. But one of the things that when Avery talked about the defense that Drew Holiday has been playing, he talked about how he's been playing on Chris Paul. And on that play, we remember from Game 5 when they tied up Devin Booker. I'm sitting there watching the game, right? And when you have 3 people collapsing in the paint all around Devin Booker, I'm like, where's the help? And nobody came to get him. Like, there was no help. So if there are 3 people on Devin Booker, somebody's got to come and get him. He had nowhere to go with the ball, and there was a turnover, and then that was it, right? The Suns they made a run. They got right back in it at the end, and then that was Listen, this has been a good series for everybody who thought, oh man, Milwaukee and Phoenix. We've seen some good basketball. We've seen some nail biters. We've seen some last second shots and plays that have just been spectacular. So it's been extraordinary to watch. I think it's good for the league. I think it's good for the game. And I'm looking forward to game 6 tonight. I hope the Suns can pull it off. My godmother, good morning, Lawanda. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining. It's always good to see you in the studio, in the room. So yeah, game 6 is tonight. Who you got? I know that Rick said he's still rolling with the Suns. Tell me, drop it in the chat. Tell me who you're picking and tell me why. I'm just curious. If you're picking a team, if you're picking the Suns, tell me why. Why do you think the Suns will be the team that can turn this thing around, right? You're not going to do anything really with Giannis. We know that. Giannis has been Giannis. I mean, even when they've lost, Giannis has been spectacular. He's a matchup nightmare, right? He's a matchup nightmare. So, but it's about the other players. It's Chris Harrington, right? It's Drew Holiday. It's defensively, what you get from PJ Tucker. You don't expect a lot from him offensively, but he's disruptive. And so, but Drew Holiday, I agree with Avery Johnson. It depends on what he can do tonight. I've seen the memes and I've read, a lot of the, I've seen the interviews and a lot of what people are talking about, saying about Chris Paul. Like, he's been up 2-0 before and here we go again. I just don't. I'm not ready to just throw in the towel just yet. I mean, he hasn't looked himself in these past few games. He has not. But here's the thing. I think he's got championship DNA. You guys follow me. You hear me talk about it. That whole what it takes to really be a champion, I think he has that. And I think he's going to have to find whatever it is that has kept him from being able to play other than the defense, right? You got to give Drew Holiday the credit that he has played on him. I think he's going to dig deep and find it because this is it, right? Everything is on the line. So I expect to see that from him. Sylvia says, I just want Chris Paul to get a ring. I do too, Sylvia. I really want him to get a ring. And also Monty Williams, the head coach. I feel really strongly about that, both of them. And I think Monty has more time. I think Chris probably doesn't have as much. But I do want to see Chris Paul get a ring. And, of course, Charles says, the series has been outstanding. Yeah, the officiating has not been great, right? I agree with you on that. So Charles says, I picked the Suns because of their heart. I believe Chris is going to step up and Booker and the rest of the team will believe. I agree with you. I do. It's like we're like on the same, wave pattern. I do. It has been an outstanding series. And so even if you're into the big city markets, this has been really good basketball, right? It's been really good basketball. And I think that Chris, like I said before, Chris is going to dig deep, right? He's going to do that thing where they say you just get it from somewhere inside, and he's going to dig deep, and we're going to see him. And when he does that, you're right, Charles. Booker and the rest, Aiden, and all the other guys are going to believe when they see, because he's been the leader, right? And even though Devin Booker is a powerhouse in terms of his ability, but it's that spirit that Chris Paul brings and leads them through or to that I think we will continue to see. So I agree with you on that. I'm excited about game 6 tonight. I'll be watching. That's all I can tell you. I'll be watching. I may be tweeting a little bit, but I will definitely be watching tonight. So let's talk a little bit about the Olympics. What do you guys think? Drop it in the chat. Do you think the Olympics should be canceled? I've had some interview requests this week to have those conversations. I don't think it's going to be canceled, right? I've said it before. I don't think it's going to be canceled just because they're there. They put, there's a lot of money involved. And I know you should probably say, well, Kim, it's not about the money. Well, unfortunately, it really kind of is. I thought they shouldn't have scheduled it. They shouldn't be. But once they got to this point, I don't know how you turn back. So one of the things that has happened from a sponsor standpoint, now it doesn't affect the money of the games, right? But Toyota, which is, a Japanese company, has pull the sponsorships, and they're going to show any sponsorships inside of Japan, because in Japan there's a groundswell of concern about the games moving forward. There are people there who think the game should be canceled because of the number of COVID cases is rising. Japan has not done well in terms of handling COVID, in terms of keeping their numbers under control. And now you bring in all these extra people, and they're concerned about resources to be able to manage what looks like a rise and a surge in COVID-19. The pandemic is affecting them greatly. And so people in Japan are like, nope, we don't want it. And it's too dangerous. Resources are going to have to go to protect all these people that are in town for the Olympics. What is it, like 11,000 athletes? And then you have the media from around the world. You have the committees, and you have everybody it takes to put on the Olympics. That's a lot of additional people to have to, who are getting a lot of attention, understandably, to have to manage and worry about, when you're saying, hey, those of us who live here are in the throes of this thing rising. So I just think it's really, really interesting. It should be, right, like Charles said, it should be, but it won't. You're right, they won't cancel it. Opening ceremonies is Friday, guys. Friday. It is Tuesday. And we've had Coco Gauff, of course, tested positive before she went. She didn't make the trip, said she was very disappointed. A gymnast, an alternate yesterday, has tested positive. They released her name. I can't remember who she is right now or her name, but you've had a basketball player not go with the team because of the protocols of testing positive. You've had officials there test positive. There have been a number of stories. And so I'm going to share this story. Thank you for that, Devin. Bradley Beal tested positive. And is not able to play. It's just this COVID thing. First of all, if you're not vaccinated, get vaccinated. And I know that there are a lot of people or some of these people who are testing positive are fully vaccinated. But what it means is you may get COVID, but it's not going to be deadly for you, right? But still, if you have COVID, they've got to put you in the protocol. And the good thing is that you're more asymptomatic and you're not really, really, really sick. But we have to get vaccinated. I think it's a reminder that this disease is not under this virus is not under control. And because of all of the misinformation about COVID, and here's what's really sad. A lot of the people who are disseminating this information, this misinformation, like Fox News, all those people, hey, they've had the vaccine. It was mandated by their company, but yet they are going on television, right? It's just really sad that people are so into feeding the foolishness of the former president, who also, by the way, he and his entire family got vaccinated. Definitely he and his wife did. As they slithered out of DC after losing the election, which he continues to say he didn't lose, or that it was stolen. And it has created all of this mayhem about the vaccine. So we weren't able to get to herd immunity. We couldn't get to the 70% or 75% or whatever the number was that we were trying to get to with people being vaccinated. And the vaccines are available. So it's really sad. If you haven't gotten it, I encourage you to do so. There's all this stuff on Facebook and YouTube about, I heard someplace where 9% of the people who've gotten the vaccine think that they have been microchipped. Okay, so that's not how microchips work. My dog Angel has a microchip. And that wasn't the process. They didn't have to just give her a shot. You're going to know if you're being microchipped. Like, they can't just give you a shot and you got a chip. That isn't how it works. But it's that kind of nonsense that is really kind of running rampant, right? So, yeah, Charles says yes. Get vaccinated. Get vaccinated. And here's the other thing. continue to practice social distancing. When I see a whole bunch of crowds, I'm fully vaccinated. I don't want to be in those. And when I go places, when I go to the grocery store, which I frequent, because it's one of my favorite places, I wear my mask. And when I go to places where most people aren't wearing masks, I tend to leave. I go in a restaurant and I wear my mask. I get to my table. If I go in a restaurant and the staff there is not wearing masks, I'm not going to eat there. I actually think that people serving you your food and preparing your food should be wearing masks anyway. I don't know why we didn't think about that before, but we have to make wise choices for ourselves, right? And Sylvia says, yes, please get vaccinated. We've got to make wise choices. We've got to make wise choices. We are not out of the woods. And I know there's some things that people were putting in motion because you're like, oh, okay, because there's a vaccine and things are better. But there's a rise. A report out this week for those of you who live in the Houston area, Methodist Hospital is at 85% capacity with their COVID unit, like they're running out of beds. And many of the people who were being hospitalized, I don't know the numbers, so I don't want to quote it, but most of the people being hospitalized have not gotten the vaccine. So that's creating the rise. It's in people who have not been vaccinated. So come on, everybody, get the vaccine. So here is a report from ABC News out of Tokyo. And I've got to start it to be able to move it forward because
this morning we're learning a member of the U.S.
I really do want to get to here.
Not going to air commercials in Japan related to the Olympics, and none of its executives plan to attend the opening ceremonies. Why the backlash?
Well, we know, unfortunately, there are a good portion of people here in Japan. The Japanese people just do not want these Olympic Games. There's been a recent surge in cases. I think they reached more than 1,000 daily new cases last week for several days in a row. You're in a state of emergency. You've got coronavirus surging in this country, and as Dr. Alok Patel just mentioned to you, Diane, the vaccination rate is pretty low. We've got 20% vaccination rate for those for both doses. 35%, just slightly higher for those who've had at least one dose of the vaccine. And so those numbers could be higher. The Japanese people know that. And we talked to some Japanese people on the street in areas that we could be in today. We're in this 14-day media bubble quarantine still, where we can have to stay inside our private transport, but we can get out in certain areas. And there were some Japanese people there. And so I asked them, what concerns do you have? And obviously the surge. Using the resources, the medical resources, the hospital, the facilities here, and having, tens of thousands of people, including 11,000 athletes in this country, all over this next 2-week period, they feel like it will strain the system, and that the Olympics, the IOC, they're just not prepared to handle this influx here in Japan. And so you've got Toyota pulling out with those commercials. That is a big blow, and it also highlights the impact on the bottom line of these games. $15 billion to $26 billion went into these games, even after the delay, pushing it back 1 year, Diane. And so it really shows that the bottom line will be impacted by these games, and Japan will not reap the benefits, will not get that major economic boost that it was hoping for from these games.
Yeah, you have to feel for the Japanese people. The host.
So that pretty much sums it up, right? That's big, as you said. You're talking, when I said that they put a lot of money, $15 to $20 billion. That's why they're not going to cancel the game. But they're also not going to reap the total economic boost that you get from hosting something like the Olympics. They're just trying to recoup probably some of the money because they put in so much to host it. Still, when you're talking about human life, when do it's a lot to put on the country. And so the people there are concerned, they're not fans. So, athletes who train their whole lives to get the chance to play in the Olympics, to compete in the Olympics, you take your family with you. They're not able to do that because you can't have fans there. So the games are going to be different for whatever it looks like when it starts. It's going to be very, very different. So all I know is COVID is real. It has not gone away. Because the vaccination rates are so low, the virus is not has not been snuffed out, and we're seeing it. I don't really know what the answer. Well, I know what the answer is, but because there's this ridiculousness with the Republicans and the messaging and the big lie and the former president, it's just a mess. So if you live in states like Texas, these are red states where the messaging is off, and they're talking. You have leaders and politicians talking about it not being necessary to get the vaccine. I'm sorry, Republican politicians. It's a problem, and so all we can do is do our part. Practice social distancing, continue to wash your hands, take your hand sanitizer with you everywhere you go, have it in your car, have it in your backpack, have it in your bag, keep it with you. Make sure that you have masks. Make sure you're washing your mask, right? Wash your mask. Don't just wear the same mask forever if you're not wearing the disposable ones. Wash your mask to make sure that they're clean, and wear your mask. And I was working on taking a vacation. I was like, I really need a break to go someplace. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to get on a plane at this point to go anywhere. So here's another thing. If you know some cool place that I could drive in Texas, and obviously the beach is out, but for a few days, drop it in the chat or inbox me and let me know if you got a suggestion, because I've decided I'm not going to get on a plane right now. I'm going to give it a little bit more time. It's, air travel is kind of hectic. Training camp for the Texans starts next week. And while I'm not there every day, I am there. I will be there pretty often, and we'll need to get tested to be at camp, even though I'm vaccinated, which makes sense because we've seen people who are vaccinated still are positive. So I'm just making sure that I make the best decisions to protect myself and my family and just people around me. So I encourage you to do that as well. Before we get out of here today, I want to talk a little bit about, since we're talking about messaging and the vaccine, I want to talk more about this whole voter rights situation. We have in Texas the Democrats from the Texas House who have gone to DC because they're really trying to impress upon the Democrats in Congress, because clearly the Republicans don't care, but the urgency as it relates to protecting our voting rights. We are talk about a state of emergency when it comes to the democracy, when it comes to voting rights, we are there. We saw yesterday that one of the convicted people that was involved in the insurrection get 8 months of jail time, right? The prosecutors were asking for 18. The judge who said everything, like he was wrong, it was awful, it's the worst thing you could do, and then gave him 8 months. We've got to get these politicians out of office. I'm kind of moving around, but the laws are different. We see the rules and the laws are different for different people. That man, that insurrectionist, that white man is only going to get 8 months of jail time for trying to overthrow the government. I'm sorry, that's what he was trying to do bodily harm, just totally act a plumb fool in the White House. I mean, in the U.S. Capitol. And then we have the man Watson from Texas who is in jail, who was arrested, assessed $100,000 bond, and could face up to 20 years in prison because he voted a few months before he was off parole. Okay, really? I can't even, what else is there to say? Here's what there's to say. If we lose these voting rights, if these voter suppressive acts are allowed to move forward, we are going to be in a world of trouble. I don't know how we ever get it back under control. And so I'm not trying to say the sky is falling, but I am trying to say that we are in a state of emergency. So Stacey Abrams last night was on the Joy Reid, on the readout with Joy Reid, and she talked about it. I'm going to move forward to when Stacey Abrams breaks it down, and this was her readout tonight with good trouble. So she brings in, let me bring her in because she explains it really well.
of Our Time Is Now, which is available now in paperback. And Stacey, it's always great to talk with you. Let's talk about what the field hearing that took place today means in practical terms.
Well, first and foremost, it's an opportunity to once again set the record straight. There's been an attempt by opponents of S1 to be, either intentionally reductive or intentionally obtuse. This is not a question of a simple change to the law. This is about a series of laws across the country, starting in Georgia, to reduce access to the right to vote for inconvenient voters, voters of color, young people, disabled voters, elderly voters, poor voters, targeting communities of color that outperformed in the 2020 and 2021 runoffs here in Georgia.
And everyone seems to understand that we think in the Democratic Party, which is the party that is the preferred choice of the majority of voters of color. And yet, despite the fact that you have fellow Democratic senators in Georgia doing a field hearing today, Kirsten Sinema is tweeting about how much she loves and respects John Lewis. I mean, I will echo Michael Harriet, who said it's a funny way of showing that he's your hero by not reflecting any of the things that he believes in. And Bishop Barber said the same thing, called it shameful to claim you honor John Lewis while you block the work that he's trying to do. And Harriet also pointed out that it was difficult to find in Googling Kirsten Sinema's background any note of her having revered John Lewis. What do you make of the Democrats who love to quote John Lewis the way people quote Dr. King, but are literally doing absolutely nothing because S1 ain't gonna pass as long as Sinema and Manchin refuse to change the filibuster?
Well, I think that we have to recognize there are two layers to this challenge. The first layer, and the successful layer, was getting 50 Democratic senators on the record supporting a version of the For the People Act that can affect these laws and can save our democracy. The second step then is what do we do mechanically to make it happen? I believe that the first step is either a carve out to the filibuster or a reduction in the threshold or returning it to its original form, which is the talking filibuster. And so I do call on every single senator, both those who have declared out loud that they oppose that they want to support the filibuster, and those who are being quiet about it. This is a time for action. Yes, we appreciate your reverence for and your respect for John Lewis and the work of saving democracy. But now is the urgent time for action. What happened in Texas, what's happening right now, what will happen in Ohio, what will happen in North Carolina, what will happen in Pennsylvania is not endemic to the South. It is endemic to authoritarians who do not want to see inconvenient voters cast their ballots and speak their minds. And that has to be the call to arms. This is not simply about one moment. This is about foundations of our democracy, and they are in peril. And it's time now for every single member of the U.S. Senate, Democrats and Republicans and Independents, to declare their allegiance to our democracy as opposed to their parties.
Okay, so that's Stacey Abrams last night on the readout, and as she said, it's the moment, right? And it is time for everybody to say where do you stand? Whether you're a Republican, Democrat, Independent, where do you stand about protecting when it comes to protecting the democracy and our rights to vote? And Charles, you're right. When I mentioned the gentleman earlier who was arrested, he was allowed to register to vote, right? He didn't register in the name of a dead person. He didn't show up as somebody else. He was allowed to register to vote. He voted, and then he was arrested. So the instance, I don't call that voter fraud at all. But the instances of voter fraud from the 2020 election that have been, and they've not been many of them, but they've been primarily people who voted. They've been people who voted for the former president, Trump. So, right? I just find it interesting that these Republicans who were trying to say, oh no, this election wasn't real, the results didn't count. So did the results that put you back in office, did those count? How does that work? I need some help trying to figure that one out. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that. I want to keep it on your minds. It does matter. Call your senators, let them hear from you. It is important. It doesn't matter if you voted for them. It doesn't matter. They represent you. And so let them hear from you. Call them. You can email them. It is important that they get the pressure of the people, because that is the only thing that will matter. If we are quietly at home and upset and angry or disengaged, we will be in a world of trouble. Rick said, I had two friends recently infected with COVID, the variant, the Delta variant, both vaccinated, one with minimal symptoms and the other hospitalized needing oxygen. Well, sorry to hear that. I hope your friends are doing well. And listen, here's the thing, but getting vaccinated, it won't keep you from getting COVID completely, right? I think the rate is, in 80 percentile, depending on which vaccine you received, but being able to survive it, being able to not be hospitalized. One of Cedric's friends was hospitalized. I don't know if he or she had any sort of pre-existing conditions. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but here's what I know. Your friend has a much better shot having been vaccinated than not. So prayerfully that he or she is doing well, and that you guys are making good choices, that you're getting the vaccine. I'm flat out encouraging you to do that, and that you're also moving around safely and avoiding crowds of people that aren't wearing masks, because you don't know who in the crowd has had the vaccine or who has not, especially in public places like that. But you wear your mask, wash your hands, use sanitizer, make the best choices you can, especially when you're going indoors. Like, be really smart about how you move around indoors. So that's my encouragement for you. Oh, great. Charles said, I will send you my email string with John Cornyn's office last week. Awesome. I appreciate that. Here's the thing. I think I said it here before. John Cornyn's office will at least engage with you. But yeah, Cancun Cruz doesn't. He doesn't even try. Like, he doesn't care. He's so entitled to be in office. It's just amazing. But there's a lot happening around the world. So I just want you guys to pay attention. These are the things I'm highlighting today, but we've seen what's happening in Cuba. We're paying attention to what's happening in Haiti. All of it is relevant and all of it is important. And so on this show, I just want to look, we're going to always talk about sports, and we're going to talk about stuff that matters too. I'm trying to get the lady who is been instrumental in the Crown Act to join us. I'd love to have a conversation with her. And there's some other people that I'm working to, bring on to Chalk Talk so that we can have some conversations and you can hear from them. I think it's good to hear from different voices about different kinds of topics. And you're right, Charles, his office does not respond. You're talking about Cancun Cruz. His office does not respond. And I can't wait to see who's going to replace him as the next Texas senator, because certainly when he's up for election in 2024, I've heard he may not run again. I just know that we need a Democrat in that seat. I didn't used to be, heavily partisan, but where we are now in this country, it is time for a change, right? It is definitely time for a change. Hey, good morning, Paul. Welcome. Thank you for being a part of the show. It's always good to have you in the studio, in the room, in the house. And here's something I'm going to leave you with, that a lot needs to change with the structure of our government. The 50 senators, that every state gets 2 senators. I don't really think that's a great idea. I mean, so you're telling me that Texas should have the same number of senators as Idaho, right? Why does Idaho need the same amount of senators as California? Why does North Dakota and South Dakota need the same amount of senators? They got 4 between North Dakota and South Dakota, but you don't think that DC should be a state? It doesn't deserve statehood. You know why they don't want to make DC a state? They don't want DC to have senators. It's pretty clear that those senators would be Democratic senators. A really good chance they'd be people of color because of the population of DC. So we should not be represented. The minority group should not represent the majority of the people. That's what's happening. This may seem extreme to you, but that's what apartheid was. So they are which is why these legislators around the country are holding on to that power as tightly as they can, including here in Texas, because if they've said it, you've heard it to them just come out and say, if we don't do these things, we won't ever be able to win again. So they're not interested in enacting policies or putting things in place to make your lives better, your families better, to keep you safer. We're just going to say, like here in Texas, get a gun. Everybody get a gun. You get a gun, you get a gun. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have a license. Oh, but wait, you want to fish? You're going to need a license for that. So crime is up. How do you manage all of this madness? So I'm saying all that to say, what can we do? You do what Charles did. You get into some conversations with these people. Ted Cruz, Cancun Cruz may not respond. He won't, because that's who he is. But at least we're doing our part. John Cornyn will at least respond, and it may not be affirmatively, not what you want to hear, but we've got to let them hear from us. And these state legislators, the governor, the people that are in office in the state of Texas, listen, they got to go. But in the meantime, they need some pressure. Because I'm really offended that the state, and I'm going to wrap up with this, that the governor, the state of Texas, will call a special session about voter suppression, because that's what it's about. But you wouldn't do it about Hurricane Harvey, and you wouldn't do it about the grid, which is fragile. Yeah, miss me on that. So anyway, thank you guys for being a part of Chalk Talk. Thank you for engaging. I appreciate that. Hey, Jessica Webb, I appreciate you. Thanks for making the connections for us, Kim. It can be hard to see how the things we face today are similar to the struggles of the past. Hey, I'm glad that that's what you get from it, because that's important. And I hope I can make that connection for you, because the connection is what will spur us into action. So we got to move. We can't just sit around and wait to see what happens, because that whole going back, I'm not going back. And, I think about, if nothing else, not just for myself, but on behalf of my mother, she was like, oh no, this cannot happen. And so I fight for her and in her name, that we can't allow this kind of action to move forward. So with that said, thank you for being a part of Chalk Talk. Follow me on my social media platforms to keep up what's happening throughout the rest of the week. And let me hear from you. If there's something that you'd like for me to talk about on the show, if there's an interview you'd like for me to get, hit me up. You can send me a note here on Facebook. You can always email me, kim@kimydavis.com. I'm pretty easy to find. And I'm at Kim Y. Davis on all my platforms, kim.y.davis on Instagram. That's who I am. You can find me, reach out. I love it when you guys show up, and I love it even more when you engage. So remember, do something kind for yourself, do something kind for somebody else, and make sure that you get the vaccine. I'll see you next time, everybody. Have a great, great week.